Andrew Weissmann, I have been off the grid for a couple of weeks, but I search your feed on Twitter by name to stay abreast of everything going on. And I want you to just sort of widen the lens and take me inside. What conversation are we really having about the affidavit? It seems that releasing the whole thing in any way that is illuminating would very much jeopardize an ongoing criminal investigation.
Yeah, there's no question that that was not going to happen when all of this to-do about the affidavit came out. There was no way that it was going to be fully released. That is, there was a concern about the classified information that was in there. There was concern about the ongoing criminal investigation, a concern about the identifying of witnesses, and everything that's happened since the search certainly raises concern about those witnesses and retaliation and interference with future witnesses. So that wasn't going to happen. Where DOJ was sort of at its weakest in its papers was that it only in a footnote said, by the way, a redacted version, which we thought about, wouldn't really be that helpful to the public. But if you think that, Judge, give us an opportunity to present that to you. And that's essentially the phase we're in, because if you could understand, the judge's point, which is the judge doesn't really know what it is that DOJ would propose, and it needs to see how much it would be redacted and what are its arguments. And so one of the things that happened today is the judge, pulled back a little bit from his oral statements and made it clear that he might actually just end up siding with the government on this issue, but also said to the government, not only give me your proposed redactions, but give me any law and your reasoning and any evidence as to why this is appropriate. So that seems really like a natural step for the judge to hear that. And unfortunately for all of us, that's going to happen ex parte, meaning it's going to be between the government and the judge, and none of us will see that information unless for some reason the judge decides to unseal it.
Let me play, Congressman Adam Schiff made some similar points to the ones you're making. Let me play his comments for you, Andrew, and get your reaction.
You could learn what witnesses may have seen in terms of the handling of those documents or people coming and going from where the documents were located. You could learn about whether representations were made that proved to be false in terms of whether they've given up the classified information. You could learn a great deal. That's just the problem, though, for the Justice Department. I think probably their concern is very legitimate. That is, that if this affidavit is revealed, it will put those sources of information at risk. We've seen the president retaliate against anyone he considers a whistleblower, accuse them of treason, and of course we've seen the president's incendiary rhetoric already lead someone to go to an FBI building with an assault weapon who was shot to death by the FBI defending itself. So the risks the Justice Department identify are real.
So just because I don't think this should ever be normal, what Schiff is saying there and what you just alluded to is that there is a very real concern that the ex-president of the United States and current leader of the Republican Party would put sources of information at risk. We all know they're talking about physical. We've seen the president retaliate against anyone he considers a whistleblower, accuse them of treason. And of course, we've also seen the president's incendiary rhetoric lead to someone to go to an FBI building with an assault weapon who was shot to death by the FBI. Just talk about the tinderbox in which any judge or any government official working on this case is having to operate.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. In fact, the judge today in his written opinion points out that one of the charges that he found there was probable cause to believe there would be evidence of dealt with obstruction of justice 1519. So he is well aware of that evidence. He's also well aware that he personally has received death threats, and there are reports that he couldn't attend religious services in the past couple of weeks because of those threats. So he's very aware of that, but this is something where DOJ and the court keeps their heads down. I think that there's no way that Donald Trump is going to really do well in the court, and as you said, for good reason, he is not venturing there, so it doesn't score a loss. And I think that the next move, and I'd be really interested in Claire's position on this, is that the Gang of Eight in Congress is now seemingly going to request information, and that poses yet another front for the Department of Justice to have to worry about, which is, okay, we probably are not going to have to turn this stuff over and risk all of the concerns about national security and the criminal investigation and witnesses in court, but is Congress now going to be sort of a backdoor and do Trump's bidding?
So, Claire, I mean, I think what Andrew's talking about, referring to the Gang of Eight, has, in normal times, referenced the heads of the intelligence committees, the head and then the ranking member, so a Democrat and a Republican, depending on who controls Congress of both chambers. Should that be happening? I mean, is that still a functioning national security safeguard in the Congress? I mean, I think it's called a spill investigation, right? That both parties and the tops of both intelligence committees would be interested in finding out what secrets might have spilled out from this leak. But when the leaker is the ex-president, does that still work?
Well, I will. First of all, I think the intelligence committees are a little different, frankly, than most of the other committees. When you're on the Intelligence Committee, I was not, but certainly observed that people understand that what the information you're given is not like normal political information. And remember, the Intelligence Committee did a pretty thorough investigation of a lot of the bad things that went on during the Trump administration around national security. I think if this briefing occurred in the SCIF, which it should, which is the room that is protected where no one can bring in a cell phone, can't even bring in a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or anything like that. And it was done in a way that the people in there understood. And by the way, those people know if that information gets out, it's one of them that did it. And that's a very serious offense. So I'm not as concerned about that as I am all the other stuff that's going on around this case. That's not on the top of my list of concerns.
So, Katie Benner, you and your colleagues have some amazing new reporting, and I want to read some of Mr. Meadows' role in how we got here and how the classified materials ended up at Mar-a-Lago. But I want to play something just based on Andrew and Claire's comments. I mean, at least for her part, Liz Cheney does not think that the Republican Party is doing anything constructive in the sort of aftermath of this search. Let me play her comments in defending the DOJ investigation.
I've seen no evidence that there was any political motivation. You've now got, the judge reviewing whether or not the affidavit or portions of it will be released. I think that will provide us additional information. It also seems to be the case that there were clearly ongoing efforts to get back whatever this information was. And that it was not presented, that the former president was unwilling to give back these materials. Now we will see, we'll learn more. But, it's a really serious thing. And I just think that for us as a party to be in a position where we're reflexively attacking career law enforcement professionals in order to defend the former president who conducted himself the way this one did, it's a really sad day for the party.
So, Katie, it's interesting. There's some resignation there from Liz Cheney that is what the Republican Party is. I know from your view and your inside knowledge of DOJ that they are not oblivious to this, but they do what they do regardless of the political winds. But tell me what kind of toll the rhetoric on the right is taking on this investigation and these professionals.
I think that there's a lot of caution around safety. We've seen it. You mentioned the attack on the FBI field office in Cincinnati. We've seen witnesses attacked, and we've seen members of the department attacked time and again by Mr. Trump's allies, both online and then physical threats. These are things that are very, very serious. They're not going to change the investigation, but they're going to ensure that the Justice Department certainly does two things. One, protect sources and methods at all costs, and two, will ensure that the Justice Department, in conducting its own investigation, conducts it in such a way that if any part of it were to be revealed in the future, it will be as bulletproof as possible because the stakes are so high.